for joining us for another episode of A Bite of Wellness. I'm your host, Chef Ricardo from Wellness in the Schools, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite vegetables, carrots. They're the star for our show, and these guys are really a nutrition superstar. So let me get into it. This is a root vegetable. You might have had other root vegetables, say potatoes or beets, or maybe even a celery root. These guys, though, these are meant to be picked and stored to be eaten all winter long. They have a long growing season up here in the Northeast United States, so generally these will be planted in March, harvested around the fall, and they can hang around for a very long time. What I really like about these vegetables is that they don't have fat at all. They are a fiber superstar, and we know that that's really going to be good for our guts. And they're a rich source of vitamin A, really good for our eyes, our skin, and our teeth as well. And so, I've got to also say that when we do cook these with a little bit of fat, we're actually going to increase the amount of vitamin A we're getting out of them. It'll also make it a little more delicious too. Did you know that fruits and vegetables are not only good to include in an appetizer or main plate, but also have a place in dessert? Most fruits and some vegetables are natural sources of sugars. This isn't to say that desserts using veggies and fruits for their sugars makes them unhealthy. On the contrary, they can make our baked goods both nutritious and delicious. The truth of it is, how you have your sugar matters. What really makes a difference is how it's packaged by nature. Nature packages sugar in fruits and some vegetables. We don't have to process it afterwards. We can just eat them directly. Fruits and vegetables will contain a lot of water, dietary fiber, and other nutrients that not only slow down our body's absorption of sugar, but also support our health in a variety of ways. As a root vegetable, carrots store both the sugars and water for the entire carrot plant. When we bake or roast carrots, the high heat of cooking will make this sweetness more pronounced. Another way that nature packages sugar is in the form of honey, molasses, or maple syrup. These types of sugars are the isolated sugars from the original plants, and they're refined by humans so that they can be better absorbed into our bodies. But without any fiber or water to slow them down, our bodies will more quickly digest and absorb these sugars. This could lead to a sharper rise and fall in blood sugar that could manifest as a sugar rush. The following demonstrations will provide an example of how you can use both the fruit and the vegetable to add nutrition and flavor to your baked goods. Even as a registered dietitian nutritionist, I really enjoy my sweets, but I also like to make my sweets as healthy as I possibly can. So I'm going to take my carrot and I'm going to show you how we can bring out the natural sweetness in our carrot and utilize it in a sweet application. In this case, we're going to be making carrot muffins. So let me show you what there is to it. With this carrot, I'm going to take it and cut it down to size. I'm going to cut off the ends. For our savory recipe, we peeled the carrots, but since we're going to go ahead and put our carrots in the muffin batter and put that into the oven, we can keep the peels on. It's going to be perfectly fine. We're going to break it down to size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my carrot and grate it with a box grater. You could do this with a food processor if you have one at home and you have a loved one to help you out with that. But for our purposes, we're going to hold on tight and we're going to break up and down, break our carrot down to size. The carrot's got a lot of natural sweetness inside of it. The secret trick here is when we put it in a baked good like a muffin or even say a pancake that you're doing on your griddle at home, it's going to bring out the natural sweetness in that carrot. It's going to become more pronounced, and we're also going to mix it up with some other spices too that'll also bring out the sweetness in the entire recipe. There will be a point where I can no longer hold on to the carrot. Then, to keep our fingers nice and safe, we'll just keep that on the side. We'll use it in another application, or probably just put it in the compost. 1 carrot grated. For our recipe, we're going to require 4 cups of carrots. So, after putting a little bit of muscle into it, I grated out all of our carrots, and we'll keep this right on the side. I'll put this right over here so you can keep on seeing my cutting board. The next thing that we're going to do is focus on what bakers call the dry mix. When we're looking at a recipe for baking a cake or a muffin, as we're doing in this case, you want to split your ingredients between dries and wets. Our dry ingredients are going to be our ingredients like our flour. Here I've got 6 cups of whole wheat flour. You could do this with all-purpose flour as well too. Whole wheat is a healthier choice. That's going to have all the bran and all of the germ. You're getting more fiber and getting more nutrients naturally. I'm going to mix it up with some cinnamon. Cinnamon is going to add a natural sweetness to our recipe. It means that I can make this taste sweeter without necessarily having to add sugar. That's not the only ingredient that's going to work in my favor. The next thing that I'm going to do is add some nutmeg. This is nutmeg in its whole form. I personally like to grate it myself. You could use a regular pre-grated nutmeg as well too, but this lends a touch of a fresher taste. And for that, you can go ahead, use your box grater, and just grate out some right on the side. You don't need a lot. A little goes a long way with nutmeg. And I've already grated most of my nutmeg. I'll take this last amount. I'll put it in with the rest of the pre-grated nutmeg. This makes about 2 teaspoons of nutmeg. Next on the list, I'm also going to add dried ground ginger as well too. It's going to add a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of tang, but it's not going to be as sharp as, say, a fresh ginger. Less is more in this case. I'm only using 1 teaspoon. Last but not least, I need to add in an ingredient that's going to help to leaven my carrot muffins. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to add in baking soda. And when the baking soda reacts with the wet ingredients, it's going to form gas bubbles when we finally put this in the oven and bake it. And it's going to form carbon dioxide, which is going to lift up the batter as it cooks to give my muffins a little bit of rise. So here I've got a tablespoon of baking soda. And that's our dry mix. We're going to mix these up all together. Now for the wet mix, we're going to start with our carrots. Even though carrots aren't necessarily a wet ingredient, we're going to treat it like that. And when we finish making our carrot muffins, everything's going to come together. It's going to be a little lumpy, so it's all right that we're going to go ahead and add in our carrots with the wet ingredients. The first wet ingredient that I'm going to work with is going to be raisins. I've got some golden raisins mixed with regular raisins right here. Raisins are going to add a nice sweet touch. My regular raisins are a touch more pronounced. The black raisins have a little more flavor in them. The golden raisins are going to add a nice bit of color and sweetness as well too. And you'll see that I'm draining out some water from my raisins. A little chef trick that I have to share with you all is that when you bake raisins, they can get hard as a rock in the oven. Usually, when I'm making a carrot muffin like this, what I like to do is pre-soak my raisins. I soak them with water to make sure that they're nice and hydrated, and that way they won't dry out as much. The next ingredient that I'm going to add is going to be maple syrup. Maple syrup is the main source of sweetness besides the carrots in this recipe. I'm going to add 2 cups of maple syrup here. When you're choosing your maple syrup in the supermarket, you want to make sure that you're getting a real maple syrup. Check the ingredients list. Most imitation maple syrups, which don't necessarily label themselves as such, tend to have high fructose corn syrup in that ingredients list. You want to make sure that you're getting maple syrup, and if in the ingredients list it says maple syrup, then you've got the right ingredient to use for this recipe. So we'll put that on the side for right now. My next secret weapon in making this sweet and making this moist without adding too much fat into it is going to be my applesauce. So I'm going to add 2 cups of applesauce to our recipe here. Here's one. I'll pour out the other one. If you don't have a jarred applesauce, but you have apples at home too, you can also just make applesauce from scratch. It is as simple as mixing apples in water for half an hour and then putting a little bit of cinnamon to make that even sweeter. So we're almost finished putting our mix together. The next thing I'm going to do is add in my 3 cups of oil. And that'll make this a little bit smoother. Definitely lend to the texture. I'm using a canola oil here because that is a flavor neutral oil. I'll use my spatula from here. We're just going to gently fold it and combine everything together. I would mix this by hand and not necessarily go ahead and use an electric mixer unless you have one with a really deep bowl. And we'll move on to the last ingredient. We're going to work with our eggs. Eggs are also going to add a bit of leavening in addition to the baking soda that we added earlier. I have already cracked out some of our eggs here, but I wanted to crack one for you all to see. And a little bit of advice just from chef to you is to go ahead and crack your eggs individually. You want to do that to make sure that you're not getting a bad egg that, say, if you're mixing them all together, you don't get one egg that's going to ruin the whole batch. So that's the benefit of doing them individually. I've got my egg here. I'm going to mix it in with the rest. Now we've almost got our wet ingredients mixed together. There are just two more to work on. We've got our eggs. I'm going to go ahead and add those in with the rest of our wets. The last thing that I'm going to do is add another source of a sweet flavor, vanilla extract. This can be a little bit on the stronger side. I've measured out 4 teaspoons here because I'm making a lot of muffins in bulk. I'm going to need that extra vanilla extract. You're going to want to make sure that the whisks are submerged completely before you go ahead and turn it on. You don't want to lift it up all the way out, otherwise your batter's going to fly everywhere, and we actually need this to go into the muffin itself. So give me just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and mix our wet ingredients together. Now that I've finished mixing together all of my wet ingredients, one of the last steps that we have to do before we bake off our muffins is to combine our wet ingredients with our dry ingredients. So, rather than take this and pour it directly in, what you want to do when you're mixing these two types of ingredient mixes together is to slowly incorporate your wets into your dries. With my 1 cup measurement, I'm going to scoop out a little bit of my wet mix and I'm going to fold it into my dry mix. And I'll do this bit by bit just to make sure that all of the ingredients are being evenly incorporated together. The risk of putting the whole wet mix in at the same time is that you'll have pockets of dry raw flour that don't really get into contact with your wet mix. And when it comes to flour, flour is actually something you do not want to eat raw. This always has to be baked. As my mix is starting to come together, you'll see that it's going to take on a lumpy consistency that's coming from the carrots and the raisins. In this case, that's perfectly fine. And you could do this with the stand mixer, or you could do it by hand just as I'm doing. But if you're doing it by hand, you want to make sure that you're folding everything over. You don't want to overmix it too much though. We want to see everything just come together. If we mix too much, that actually is going to make the strands of gluten, the protein in my flour, cross-link together. It's going to become a little denser, it's going to become a little bit tougher. So we don't want to mix all of that way too much, just enough to see everything combine. That's the last of it. Using my spatula, I'll just make sure I get every last bit of flavor that's in this bowl before I go ahead and wash it off. And now we'll combine all the ingredients one last time. And there's my batter. Can't eat it just yet. There's one last step to it. We've got to bake these guys off. So to do that, one of the things that you'll want to do to prepare is to take a muffin tin. You can either use liners like I'm using right now, or you can go ahead as part of your preparation at the beginning of cooking, you could take a little bit of oil, put it onto a paper towel, and just rub the insides of your muffin tins. That way it doesn't stick when you bake, and it's not a pain to get off at the very end. Liners are a little bit easier too. I like those because they're just easy to go ahead and give out. So, I've got a lot of batter right here. Using a tablespoon or an ice cream scoop, preferably, you want to go ahead and just portion out a little bit of the batter. Make sure that you're getting a little bit of everything in the mix. There are some carrots and each of the raisins. And you're going to go ahead and pour in about 2 tablespoons of batter per muffin pan. These are normal size muffins. If you've got a mini muffin pan at home, I think 1 tablespoon will actually do it. Remember, we've got eggs and baking soda in our mix. That's going to rise. These are going to expand when we put them into the oven. Now that I've gone ahead and filled all of my muffin tins with batter, we're going to go ahead and put this into the oven. Remember, our oven is set at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So we'll go pop this in. We'll check on it Muffins about this size will generally take about 16 to 20 minutes to cook. So we'll give these just a moment to go on ahead and cook, and we'll come back and check them out. Time for the big reveal, everybody. Our muffins have been in for about 25 minutes or so. At 15, they still looked a little not set. You can always tell by seeing how liquidy it is. Maybe take an oven mitt, go ahead and push the tray just to see if it's set. In this case, it should be set by now, so I'll go ahead and pull that out from over here. Ah, that smells amazing. Let me get out my other tray, and I'll come up and give you a closer look. So I've got our muffins out from the oven, and because they're still cooking, they're still in this hot pan, I'm moving them out and putting them on a plate so that they can just take some time and cool down. And we'll get a couple of others on here. But as you could probably see without me even bringing it up, these have really doubled in size. Those 2 tablespoons of batter went a long way, and this smells really, really good to say the least. You could see a little bit of raisins coming up on the surface there. You could see the speckle of the orange carrots against the brown of the batter, and that's our carrot muffin right there. Really tempting to just go ahead and eat one, but I gotta let these cool down. Once again, here are our carrot muffins. I like them just the way they are with a little bit of coffee. Some people like to put a topping on them. You could do that as well too. I think that this is already decorative enough with the festive liner that we've used for our muffins. Hi everybody, I hope that you enjoyed watching the spiced carrot cake demonstration. We're going to do another demonstration to show you how you can get some more fruits and veggies into your baked goods. The star of my show for today is going to be the humble banana. And so this is going to be a source of rich nutrients, particularly potassium, good for your muscles, good for your nerves, but also it's really sweet too. It's got a little bit of soluble fiber, but it has got a rich source of natural sugar. We're gonna take this, use it to our benefit, and use it to sweeten up our baked goods. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start by putting together our wet mix for our recipe for today, which is a banana bread. This is something that you can put into a loaf pan. I am ultimately going to go ahead and put this into muffin tins, which I really like because it makes for a nice portion size. You can take it easily, it travels well. So to start, first thing that I'm going to do is take some butter and put it into a bowl. We're going to be using an unsalted butter to get in our flavor. And so I'll go ahead and place this in. Remember friends, our recipe will come up at the end of the episode, so be sure to take a picture of it or take a screenshot when we get there. But first things first, I've got my butter in a big large bowl. The next thing that I'm going to do is add in my sugar. I'm not using a lot of sugar. I'm going to be relying on the banana for sweetness, but I do need to add a little extra sweetness. I'm going to go with a brown sugar. I've got about a cup of brown sugar right here, and what I'm going to do is take my mixer. I'll go ahead, I will cream this together, and it's just to combine it until it's evenly incorporated. This can be done on low, it's just a matter of mixing everything together, and we'll build the rest of our wet mix from there. You might see that I have a towel underneath my bowl. This is a good best practice to keep your bowl from slipping too much. Alright, so our butter and our sugar are creamed together right now. The next thing that I'm going to do is add in my eggs. And so I've gone ahead and cracked some eggs. Our eggs are going to add some moisture. They're going to also add some leavening properties to our banana bread. I've cracked my eggs out ahead of time already. I'm just going to go ahead and add them in. And at this point, even though they're solid, I'm going to add in the star of our show, our banana, and we're going to mix everything together. Actually, using our mixer is going to help to mash the banana together. Now, the riper your banana, the better it is. This one, as you can see, is kind of in the just right, perfect for eating category. You would ideally be best suited doing this recipe with bananas that have more brown spots or are closer to the almost blackened skin color that you might not necessarily want to eat. Those are the best for baking. So I'll take the rest of my bananas. You could always chop them up. If you like your banana bread to have a chunky texture, you can of course chop some, keep them on the side, and add them in with the rest of the batter when it's a little more completed. But I'm going to go on the smoother side. I've got my banana in here with my eggs, and I'm just going to whip everything up. And while I'm doing this, while I'm breaking down my bananas, I'll also go ahead and add in my other wet ingredient, which is going to be our vanilla extract. I'm using a tablespoon of vanilla extract for the quantity of batter I'm making, and it's going to add a nice sweet touch. You don't want to overdo it. Combined with the sugar and the bananas, it's really going to be on the sweet side. This is mostly about mix. If you find that some elements of the wet mix are kicking on up, just take a little rubber spatula, push them back in, and give it one more quick blend. But what you're looking for is to evenly incorporate everything together, and that should do it. So now, our wet mix has come together. We've got our butter, our eggs, our sugar, our banana, and our vanilla extract all mixed together. At this point, what I'm going to do is slowly incorporate in the dry mix. Now, for my dry mix, I'm only using a couple of ingredients. I've got some baking soda that I will of course mix in. Our baking soda is going to add a little bit of salt, but it's also going to be the primary leavener in our baked banana bread. The other thing I'm going to add in bit by bit is whole wheat flour. We could get away with using whole wheat flour over white flour here because there's so much moisture and so much richness from the banana, you won't really notice a difference. The most important thing though is to just gently fold in your whole wheat flour bit by bit. The reason why is we do not want to overmix this, so I actually won't use the electric mixer right now. I'm going to switch to using my spatula, and I just want to gently fold in. You don't want to mix too much because that will overwork the gluten in the whole wheat flour, which makes for a chewier, denser product. So I just want to mix it around. And what I'm really doing is folding my ingredients together until they're just combined, and then bit by bit, I'll continue to add on in flour until everything is evenly incorporated. As an alternative too, if say you don't like the texture or feel of whole wheat flour, you could always work with an alternative flour of your choice too. My go-to would be almond. You could use it in equal amounts as you would for all-purpose flour. Some other flours might not be suitable, say like a coconut flour. That's really going to make the product denser. While I don't have it included in the recipe that you're going to receive, you can also put in a pinch of cinnamon as well too to just boost the flavors. It'll add a sweeter texture and taste as well too. So I've gone ahead, I finished folding up my whole wheat flour into my batter. This is what our product looks like right now. You're looking for it to be just combined, to not see too many patches of flour. If you see raw flour, go ahead and just fold a little more as gently as you possibly can. You definitely don't want to scoop out too much. At this point, the next thing that I'm going to go ahead and fold in is going to be some chocolate chips. I'm using a semi-sweet chocolate chip here, if that's your yum. Dark chocolate would also work perfectly fine. My recipe for the quantity that I'm using is going to call for 2 cups. If you like to top off your banana bread or baked goods with a little bit of chocolate, just save some on the side. And we'll also top off with some sunflower seeds. You could definitely use that as a garnish. You could use your favorite nut of choice in here as well. I personally like walnut. However, if you are cooking for someone with who cannot tolerate nuts, sunflower seeds is a good choice. Pumpkin seeds will add a nice bit of color too. But now that I've gone ahead and folded my my chocolate chips into my batter, here's what we're looking like. We are just about ready to put these into an oven. So let me just do a little rearranging right over here. at this point, I'm going to go ahead and pull out my muffin tin. If you are making this as a banana bread, what you want to do is make sure that your loaf pan is greased. You can also put in a sheet of parchment paper in there as well, just for easier removal. But what I'll do right now is I'm going to take an ice cream scoop out my dough, and portion that into my muffin tins. Also, the muffin tins make for just really nice cleanup. You don't want to fill these up all the way through. You want to make sure that these have a little bit of space to rise. I can still see some chunks of banana in mine. I know that some of it has been whipped into the batter, but biting into those little chunks of banana, it's going to taste absolutely amazing, especially because the banana is going to get a little sweeter once it gets cooked in the oven. So here's my tray. Last thing to do, I'm going to take a little garnish of sunflower seeds, just put a pinch on the top, scatter that throughout. It'll make for a nice topping once these are finished cooking. And that is all there is to it. We're going to go ahead and put this in the oven. Our oven is preheated at 350 degrees. If you are making this as a loaf, it's going to need a little more time. You're going to need close to an hour to finish baking off the banana bread. However, if you're doing this as a muffin like I am, 20 to 25 minutes should be ideal. You can always check it by sticking a toothpick into the center of your muffins. So let me go ahead, put this in the oven, and we'll see how things look once they're finished baking. All right, 22 minutes have come and gone, and it's time to check these banana muffins. So the best way that I can recommend to check for doneness is by using a toothpick to test to see if there's any wet batter. If you plunge it straight into the center on any of these, what you should expect is to see that it comes out nice and clean, just like how you see here. If there's a little bit of chocolate, that's okay, it's gonna melt. But as long as you don't see wet batter, that's a sign that your baked good is finished. And so we went ahead, we baked in our banana in here. It's adding a rich amount of sweetness. It's adding a bit of moisture. And it's just another good way of eating the rainbow, even in your baked goods.